Elephant Monkey Music Show. Today I'm lead singer Harry from Harem Scarem. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Good. We have a couple technical bumps. Technology is not our friend, but luckily we have a good thing to talk about. This album, Chasing Euphoria, is awesome. You've had a couple singles out, so let's chat about the album and
Uh,
everything
yeah,
else that goes
well,
with it.
we started working on that last year in July. We really hadn't focused on any Harem Scarem stuff. We put out our last album during the pandemic, like literally March 2020, and tried to tour it, booked a bunch of shows multiple times, including like Sweden Rock Festival and like things that we'd never done before as a band. So we were pretty excited about it, and it kept getting canceled. And we just kind of sat on the sidelines and waited for all that to clear up. And because we do a lot of studio work individually, we just got sidetracked with life and other projects. And so
Mhm.
it took us a long time to get back into harem scarem mode, specifically writing for a purpose. And it wasn't until Frontiers Records reached out to us in, yeah, June of 2024 and said, hey, can we set a deadline for this? Because without a deadline, we just would never do it. So
Or you never end it, right? You just keep working on it. 25 songs in.
yeah, or even start if I'm being honest, because without the deadline, there's no reason to start in our mind, like because there's always a little fire to put out day to day with regards to what you have to do and what we're working on. And it was just one of those things where it's just like we need that and we've always needed that. So we got to work and we started recording around November, December, finished it up in January, and it'll be out April 25th.
I've heard the whole thing is really good. It's a powerful album. It's strong. You've had a good, strong album come out. Obviously, the songwriting is core with your band. Big on melody, always catchy. It's almost inspirational. It's kind of nice, especially when things are so heavy lately. To have something very positive. It's like it doesn't suck. I mean, the world's pretty heavy right now.
Yeah, and you know what? We've done everything over, our careers. We started off writing pretty simple lyrics. I don't want to use the word mundane, but you know what? When you're a teenager and you're writing songs like we were for our first album, we relied heavily on just, co-writing and learning writing as a craft. And to be honest, I mean, I was just mimicking other people's, songs and lyrics and content and just trying to write based on, what I knew at the time. And what I knew at the time was just what I'm hearing on the radio, right? I'm
Right.
going,
Which
oh,
is
okay, well, that sounds cool. And in that era, it was pretty basic, let's say, lyrically, right? So over the years, we've gone off the beaten path and gotten dark sometimes. A lot of the lyrics were dark and heavy, and then the fan reaction, to be honest, after all these years, almost 40 years of making records and writing songs, fan reaction to positive music is much better than negative, unless it's genre specific. And with regards
yeah,
to
right.
this is who we are, this is what we always do, that's what everyone signed up for, that's what you give them. But for us, it's a little bit different because of our singles and our radio. Uh, Exposure, like to the
Mhm.
mainstream public has basically been pop songs, if I'm being honest. They've been window dressed up as, rock songs, but we came more from the era of like Def Leppard hysteria, where they're just pop songs disguised
Sure.
as
It's pop
rock
songs.
to me.
Well, I wouldn't use the word even disguise, because that sounds like you're putting yourself down or any artist down. I mean, to me, not in a negative way, you know what I'm saying, but like you're pulling it
Yeah.
back. A good song is first off just a good song. And if it's got a guitar in it, it's even better. You know what I mean? This is the Beatles did.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I think what's interesting with you guys is now not being from the States, so you didn't really get the full hit of the late 80s, early 90s metal. But then the music industry flipped at the same time,
Yeah.
and everybody kind of had to fend for themselves. And like what happened to a lot of bands was always interesting how they recovered and moved about, changed names, did
Yeah.
things, tried different creative sounds. But you're also an artist, and you also want to evolve and not be stuck in the same sound. Also,
Yeah.
So the challenge is like a fan meets you, or here's your music, and they're like, oh, we like this sound, this is who we are, and we lock that in forever. Or a fan loves you as an artist and says, I want you to grow.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate it, maybe I don't like it. You know what I'm saying? So there's like a lot of different dimensions there. One of the things with respect to your band is even though you guys have separated at times, you guys all work very individual. And I think you've always come back stronger. And luckily, the psychology of all you guys also come back as adults to work together with all those changes. It sounds like a loaded statement, but you know what I'm saying? As you grow as an adult and in the music business, your opinions will firm up. So to come back and still write cohesively is
Yeah.
more of a testament also of
Yeah, I mean, you've nailed it. Obviously, you're deep in the weeds. If you're listening to music and you can come to those conclusions about the evolution, not only for any human being as a person, just, I'm not the same person that I was when I
no.
was 17, 18 years old, thank God. But if I listen to some of the musicians that are my age, like I'll be 57 this year in
Mhm.
July. So, I started making records when I was literally 50. I turned 16 when we made our first record, and that was pre-Harem Scarem. And then, Harem Scarem started when I was 18. So that mindset and that person doesn't exist anymore. But what I can do is remember what I was trying to achieve musically, sonically. And so this is a
Yeah.
throwback to what we were trying to achieve because to overcomplicate this answer, you
I,
know,
I
you
want you to overcomplicate things. I want you to throw in some lies. I really want you to just really just go over broke.
Yeah, because you know what? It is something that we've talked about and thought about just in general conversation. Being a guy in a band, if you can do a plane trip to Japan 25 times, these things come up, right? So you just
Yeah.
chat about them and get everyone's perspective. But for me, looking back, I can easily see how we got to where we were, but never knew it in the moment,
Mhm.
right? So you're trying to evolve as a songwriter. You're just trying to figure it out in the beginning. So you're making your first record, your second record. Um, of course, it's no surprise that that's where you're building your fan base in the beginning. And those hardcore fans come on board for a reason because of the way you sound and the songs that you write and the aesthetic of the band sonically, lyrically,
And the age they're
even the look
relating
of
to
the
you.
band.
I heard you. I was the same age as you. I'm gonna be 55. So I mean, it's like
Yeah.
literally hearing music from somebody your own age appear.
Exactly. And we're all, I want to say, victims of that era with regards to we heard what we heard on the radio. That was mainstream radio at the time. I always explain to people, I go, you're not going to believe this, but Bon Jovi and Whitesnake were number one on the radio. So it's not Dua Lipa and Taylor Swift. It was literally Aerosmith and
Hmm.
bands like that. So, to say we weren't doing pop music is a little bit weird because it was popular music at the time, but now
Right.
is so shifted to underground and even niche in the sense that you'll never hear it on the radio. So there's an underground following that follows us, and we've built a fan base on the back of what we attempted to do in the late 80s, early 90s. But then the whole script flipped in the 90s with this isn't what's cool, it's not what's hip. Record companies don't want to support it, and if you want to make records, you need to be supported somehow. So that's where the worlds kept colliding and we kept going, all right, well, you know what? We actually like power pop music, but we also love Metallica and Queen and Alice in Chains was one of my
Hmm.
favorite albums. So that style of music decimated what we were doing, but also I loved it. So I'm like, fuck, this is weird. And so we just went off and did whatever we wanted. And we were like, well, we like it. And if someone else likes it, we'll find a fan or a home for this. But everything else was out the window anyway, because if we built a fan base based on sounding like Def Leppard and Whitesnake, no one's supporting it. So you're not going to get radio
Yeah.
support. You're not going to get label support. You're out on your own anyway. So if you're going to do something organic that you like to do. And so this evolution of where we started and where we ended up, and I'll end this now because I'm babbling on. But over the last 10 years, we've decided that we're going to go back and we're going to do music for the fan base that hopped on the bandwagon in the beginning. And we're going to make records that sound like um, late 80s, early 90s, because that's what our core fan base likes. And we know how to do that. It's baked into the cake when Pete and I write songs, the way I sing, the way he plays. We like melodies, to your point. We write songs that are singable. So as advertised, we give them what they want and we try and do a good job of it. And that's really where we're at with it.
But you enjoy it though. I mean, I'm not like it's not like dance monkey dance. Like put your little
I,
jacket on,
yeah,
go out there. I mean,
I
you
love
like it.
making records. So, like there's a love-hate relationship, if I'm being honest, with doing the kind of music that you feel like I've been doing the same thing for 40 years. But we've evolved enough as people to realize the task at hand and be able to fulfill the task. And that doesn't mean that, like, you can't listen to that record and think we're dialing it in. There's no way,
That's
right?
always the thing, right? It's got to be sincere.
It has to be, and we put in the time and effort because we love the journey of writing and recording and making the record. Whether I'm doing it for somebody else or I'm doing it for me, it's not genre specific. In the sense that we put in effort if it's music we love or
Right.
it's flavor of the month for us right now. Because as people, as we've just discussed, that can change from late 80s to early 90s to 2000s to today. And we're not jumping on and off bandwagons
Really.
anymore like we were in the past because we were just looking for something to do that excited us and weren't making the same record over and over again. Our biggest challenge today is not repeating ourselves, not writing a song again after hundreds of songs. This is our 16th studio album, so just at 10 songs alone, and there's more, there's 160 riffs, 160 choruses and themes to write about. It's daunting when you start from zero
Right.
and you're like, what am I going to write about? The song's going to be in E, A, or D, or maybe G.
Well, that's actually a good point because a lot of artists will talk about that, or they won't talk about it. I mean, I talked to George Lynch, and George Lynch was like, he's like, I think I write some songs. I think I just wrote the riff. He goes, can I steal for myself? Can I like? I'm like,
Yeah.
it's your riff. Do it. Do what you want.
Well, but how
That's the
about not
point, though.
even
How contrived do
realizing
you
it?
feel though at that point,
How about
though?
not even realizing it? Because you go like, Pete will play me a riff and I'll go, didn't we do that in 2004 on this record? And we literally go to Spotify and go, well, fuck, I guess we can't use that. It sounds too much like it because he's got
Well,
a
that's
style. He plays a certain way. I write melodies a certain way. How many lyrics, how many song titles can you come up with that don't piggyback on something you've already said or attempted to do, and then write it and make it sound fresh and new? But so that's the challenge, 40 years later and 16 albums later, but like we view it as if that's our biggest problem in life, we'll take it, and that's the challenge, and that's what
there's
we.
supposed to be a challenge. There's supposed to be challenges as an artist. Otherwise, it's boring. You know, a couple things you said. Like first off, like I think the '80s and that early '90s was the last time period when bands were allowed to have that package and the record label and everything else. And as far as I've always been concerned, because I went to school for music, I said, is record labels are just bags for musicians with the worst interest rates and the worst loans, right?
Yeah.
And you get the '90s that came out, you had a bunch of bands. They came literally. This was the first time in music. I mean, everything is doing this show. I've talked to so many artists for so long now. I've always become like music part of it was more like just an archaeologist of music. With like you watch the careers of people and you talk about it and the evolution. And as long as you've been honest to yourself and you just dig what you do, it's always been allows you to go to the top. Because what'll happen is, you know, the '80s, so like in the '90s, all those bands came out. Some of those had good bands, but they were only one or two hit songs out there, and they were dropped right away. They didn't even have the length of the '70s when you had 18 albums by the Eagles, or not that being accurate, but I'm saying
Yeah.
you didn't have the cycle changed, and you're from the time period where that was the end of the cycle of artists. And prior to that, disco bands and funk bands and and swing bands, they all had it was here. The '90s is one thing that really kind of weird, in the sense that it's never really recovered because they were a bank and they're poor investors is what they really were. And on top of that, they ate themselves alive, which then became, all the other streaming and Spotify and Napster and that. They ate themselves alive. The musicians, as always, are victims, like any art creative source, because they're trying to do whatever. Not all just innocent victims, but you know what I'm saying? They took the heat of it because of legal contracts. But when you find out what you do as an artist, and you keep writing sincerely. If you want to write a song that you similar to what you wrote when you were younger, why not? It's like being an artist saying, I painted that style in that time. I'm not going to paint that way again. No, you do what you do because it's sincere, you know. Um, the only challenge I think sometimes besides that with the comment was as an artist, and I think rock is hard, but a lot of popular music is hard, is they want you to look the same, they want you to sound the same.
Yeah.
And there's very little wiggle room for evolution, which
Yeah.
is probably almost the hardest part for an artist because an artist will be like, well, I want to write some songs, I want to grow a little bit. I'm not changing, but I want to do a new album. And then you get to show, everyone wants to hear the album, they want to hear the hits. And I've heard
Right.
artists say, complain about no one wants to hear the albums. They go, but then to be honest with you, if I go to AC/DC, I don't want to hear the new album. I just want to hear the hits. They go, so we're
Yeah.
all a hypocrite
Look,
too. So
yeah.
yeah, that's the hard part.
No, and
Where
look,
you're
I
at
mean,
right now with a new album.
yeah, coming to that realization as an artist, if you're willing to be self-aware enough and I guess pliable as a person and just go, who am I here for?
Mm.
Um, and I've been saying this more than ever in the last few years, where you never would have heard me say this when I was 22 or 24. I'm like, what do you think they want to hear, and what do you think we should do? And let's do that because at this point, it's like I don't feel like I want. I'm not trying to go against the grain or fight anybody on this. I want to have a community of people that enjoy what we do and us enjoy it along with them and vice versa. So it only stands to reason that you want to listen to your hardcore fan base. And I think that's true of any band that, you should do that because who are you doing this for then? Like, unless it's completely selfish and you want to get up
For
on
you as an artist,
I mean,
you can
yeah,
do it
and
for.
again, we've done so much of that, and we do enjoy it. It's not like we put out music that we hate. We loved it at the time, and that's always true. And we like this new record, but we're only doing 3 songs off the new record. You know why? Because we've got
A million songs.
160 songs in our catalog, and most people like the music off our first and second record. That's the truth. So 80% of the show is off the first and second record, and people love it. And people come up to us at the end of the show and go, "We love that you did this song. We want to hear No Justice slowly slipping away, change comes around, all the shit." And we do it and we happily do it now. Where before I begrudged it a little bit, but then again, that was 20 years ago, guy who just wanted to prove that my new song is better than my last song. I mean, my old stuff. And,
Right.
it's just like, it's not a battle worth having with your hardcore fans that have brought you here and supported you. And I mean, I've never had a real job my entire life. I do music and I'm super grateful about that. So maybe that's why I've come around to it from I don't know, a philosophical view
No,
of just
that's
like,
really interesting.
I
It
like,
is because
yeah,
I haven't heard as much of this use. This is a little refreshing, different. There is a part 'cause I think as an artist, as a fan, but I mean I have a podcast, like so my views are a lot different. I don't do this for money. I do it because of
yeah,
love and the press.
yeah,
This is definitely
yeah,
a passion thing. So for me, I'll do a show and I'd be happy to see like half the show of not being anything. The first time I did though, I used to be like that, and then I went to a show and saw Black Crowes way back in the 1800s because I'm also old like you. And they came out, and I think they did no songs from their hits. And I was like, "What is this?" And then by halfway through the show, I'm like, "You know what? I can go listen to the album when I get home. This is awesome."
yeah.
But and there was music. I want to say this also. I loved Alice in Chains. I'm gonna tell you what. I saw Alice in Chains open up for. I was just talking about this today. Open up for Extreme in a club,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
it worked for both of them. It could have worked. I just want to say that out there. The 80s and 90s cover band, the bands overlap. It could have worked better. The music
yeah,
industry chilled out a little bit.
yeah,
Um, but as an artist, to embrace it, as long as you're being true to who you are as an artist, and you have time for you, because some artists can do like I can do this band, but then some songs don't fit here, so I can do this. I have different flavors and just different parts of me when I get in the car. I listen to the same thing all the time. That's what kind of feels like you are. You're like just different parts of you. Like if this was just
yeah,
you and you did nothing else, you wouldn't probably enjoy it as much. I would assume because you'd feel like
100,
you were trapped. But the fact
yeah,
that this is like I actually enjoy this part of me because I also have this part of me that makes this sound or creativity. You know what I mean? It
yeah.
allows you to be other people
Yeah, no,
without
that's
being trapped.
absolutely right. And I've always been like that. Like there was never a time in my life where I wasn't making records with other people for other people while I'm doing Harem Scarem because I couldn't just do this one thing. But by doing so, I was never frustrated to the point where I wanted to experiment so much with Harem Scarem because of that frustration. And the same with Pete. We're always working on other people's records. And if anything, like I keep, like I've said, that's allowed us to focus and realize what Harem Scarem is. Because when you go off in all these different directions, either by yourself or with another artist, you quickly come back to this and see what's good about it, right? So Pete's guitar playing and his riff writing, and I'm writing lyrics and melodies, and those two worlds coming together and doing what we do, that is Harem Scarem. And you realize that when you work with other guitar players, or he works
Right.
with other singers, or we're making a country record, or we'll do, but you said flavors, and that's exactly right. It's like, I like steak. I like ice cream. I don't put the ice cream on the steak, but I can enjoy one. I don't want it every day,
Right.
like that kind of a thing. And oddly enough, and for anybody listening in the States, this isn't a slight on anyone, but in North America, Canada included, that was the height of, like, in our career. I saw one flavor working at a particular time, and that was it. There was no room for anything else. When grunge came around, there was no room for hair bands. And I'm talking about radio industry kind of stuff. But when we went to the
AOR, anything that looked like anything.
anything that looked like that was out the window.
I
Anything
think
that
anything
sounded like
we
that
had an
out the
album before
window.
that it was considered a hair band at that point. I think there's so many bands that weren't even hair bands. If you had an
Well,
album out
that's
at that point, it would be
I
considered a hair
know.
band.
It was over. And so, but oddly enough, we hit Europe and then started going to Asia. That was not the vibe at all. So they allowed that 80s band to be prevalent in the mid 90s, 2000s. We would go to Japan, and our hardcore fans, they
Yep.
followed us no matter what we were doing. And holy shit, did we ever try to throw them off the trail by making power pop records, like really dark, weird, heavy records as well, like on our third record. And we didn't even realize it at the time that we were going so far off center and then coming back to it again now. That was it, because we didn't hear that in Europe. We didn't hear that. We didn't hear
Yeah.
the same things that we
What
were
about
hearing.
I'm sorry. What about Germany for you guys? It seems like
It was
Germany,
great.
Japan,
Yeah,
and the Europe festivals saved rock,
yeah,
classic
yeah,
rock, hair metal, thrash, like all
yeah,
anything that had guitar.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
It
So
seems like it saved all of them. Those are the three places I always hear back fans are like,
yeah,
it was Germany that saved me. Germany
yeah,
kept the Hooters going for a long time. Like for pop bands, like
100%. 100%. So, and again, like us being out here, we live in our own little world in the sense that it mattered so much to us how well we did in our own backyard. And because, our first record didn't come out until 1991 on Warner, we were with Warner for 11 years. And the weird part about it is we were
wow, that's a long
wishing,
time after during that time period. It's pretty cracky, really
yeah,
weird.
I mean, we were wishing we would get dropped by Warner because of this exact thing. Is like when our first record came out on Warner, they abandoned this style of music, and to not be released in America, and the biggest market in the world for 11 years of the beginning of
Hmm.
our career, it's a miracle that we survived. And we survived with no American support, no American radio, no nothing going on, no touring, because you can't tour if you don't have a record out. You can't do anything. It's all a vicious circle.
It may have kept you guys around because there's a lot of American bands that were in America that couldn't be released in America, also that a lot of labels were holding on to. A
I
lot of those
know.
bands that were your peers, they actually took the album and said, you know what, I'm not gonna start name dropping, but they said, I'm gonna show take your album, I'm gonna put it on the shelf. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
release it, but I'm not
Well,
gonna release you
100%.
either because I don't want somebody else to get success with you and release it also. So I'm gonna hold your
Yeah.
career and
Yeah.
your contract.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's right. So oddly enough for us, because we were doing really well in Asia and Europe, like we've sold a couple million records in Japan. So there's no way Warner's dropping us because we're making them a shit ton of money in Japan
off
alone,
the
let
Japan
alone
label,
the rest
yeah,
of.
right.
So here we are playing the kind of music that is like literally like Poison, not the band, to the industry while we're selling records for Warner, making them a lot of money, us doing fine, and everyone thinking that our career's over. And it was the weirdest thing
And
ever.
that's actually it almost seems like they're being smart on some level because the market wasn't there to promote you in this label. It would have been a negative because a lot of the bands that were doing it at that time were losing, and they were playing
Yeah,
town to town for gas money. These were
yeah,
bigger bands that
yeah,
would have been your peers at the
yeah.
time. it almost feels like by doing that you were kind of insulated. I mean, I guess it would be frustrating as an
We were,
artist,
we were.
but looking back in a behind the music type of thing, you know what I'm saying? It's interesting to see that yeah, it almost had some kind of a positive effect on some level too.
100%, because you know what else happened is that because nobody gave a shit. Like our A&R guy couldn't name a song off our record because he's trying to find the next Nirvana, right?
Right.
He's not looking back at the hair band guys, right?
Plus, you're not from the United States; you're from Canada. So let's be
Yeah.
honest. You guys have always gotten second fiddle. By the way, people watching, there's no tariffs in this video. By the way, we are we are all good. We are. This is good. There's no issues.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is um. But
Non-tariff radio.
this is
Yeah, no, it's
non-tariff. Yeah, we don't care about that kind of stuff. We're not like that.
yeah.
USA does not care like that. Just so you know, we're all good here with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was weird because again, without the real support at the label, but they're funding making the records, but not giving us enough to even go hire a proper producer, right? So in retrospect, that's how we learned to make records on the back of Warner not supporting us enough to even open up the piggy bank to hire a proper producer. They say, hey, you're going to do your next record. Who do you think you want to produce the record? And we go, that guy, that guy, that guy, or that guy. Give them 5 names. They go,
Yeah,
that's 3 times what your budget is just for the producer. And so we literally started making records ourselves. And so we learned production, we learned engineering, we started
yeah.
delivering our own records to Warner. And so in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened to us because I also had other friends that got, uh, the gold glove treatment that
Mhm.
don't know one mic from another. They don't know what happened to their career. Because if you're forced to be in the weeds and figure it out for yourself, that knowledge later on has so much value down the road. It's the reason I was able to buy a recording studio, be
Yep.
a mixer. Now, my day job for the last 15 years, other than being in Harem Scarem, is that I'm a mastering engineer. I work on records all day, every day for other people, and that's my job. And so I'm in the music business and I'm doing this thing, but I never would have got here if it wasn't for the fact that I was forced into it by lack of success and funding in the early years. So the onus was put on me to figure it out if I ever wanted to deliver a record.
Mhm.
Um, no one is going to sit in the studio with me and record 5,000 backing vocals. Like it's just economically
No.
not like we're not Queen making Night of the Opera. There's no limit.
But you also see that being the other end of it, you're like, that's also bananas to do for some songs and for some artists to begin with. That is just way too much. Like that,
Yeah,
you're in the recording seat going like for a band to do that. You're like, that is a little too much. You guys really need to roll it. You know
well,
what I mean?
absolutely. Oh no,
Like
no,
some of the
yeah,
songs,
like and
and some of the things
you
that the
know,
young artists
oh
coming in
no,
wanting, you could have been
Mhm.
like, you know what? Yeah, that is a little too much. Like because I was
Yeah,
school for recording also. That was like was recording in business. So to me, I'm like
yeah,
going in and learning. Like my perspective flipped. And I almost think that like there should be a balance of the two for anyways anything because it feels like and this is interesting because it feels like there's kids that have like a lot of money and then you have people that are working parents and the parents aren't super loving or whatever. They go it gives them everything. And that's what some of the labels do. And these bands had it. And then once they stopped, they couldn't survive on their own. And you see those guys later on in life. Maybe they're working for their parents, maybe they're not, they don't know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? But then something like you're like, I was nothing given to me. Those kind of kids. And they're starting their own business, they work to their own because nothing was handed to them. Now you have to be a certain person. If you weren't the
yeah,
person you were,
100%.
you would have been
Yeah,
there. But I'm saying, but sometimes when you are that person and you don't have everything and certain situations force you into it,
yeah,
you could still do okay and do better, probably actually,
yeah,
because
oh, a
you
hundred
would have
percent. Yeah,
survived. If you were
yeah.
babied, you wouldn't have survived. Not in music, I
Absolutely,
guess.
because again, like I have enough friends, I'm doing this my whole life, and all my friends are in the music industry per se, and just hearing the stories, especially working with so many other artists, especially as a mastering engineer, because sometimes I'll work on 4 different projects in one day. So it's not like even as a record producer, I'll be on a record for 3 to 6 months, and so you can live a couple pseudo careers in a year. But as a mastering engineer, I interact with labels, managers, band people, producers, mixers, and you hear all the stories. People love to talk and tell you all the ins and outs.
So
So
yeah,
it's just been a wealth of knowledge to have these connections and work with so many diverse people in all these industries, from Latin artists to all the way to, metal bands and country records and stuff like that. But to your point, and, it's like the labels look at you to continue that analogy. It's like, I'm going to adopt a child, and I'm
yeah,
going to give them everything. and keep them kind of dumb because there's something
Hmm.
about this that, they do really, really well. I'm not going to educate them beyond just on a need to know basis. And when I'm done with you, you're out the door.
Yeah.
You're out
Yeah.
of the house. The checks, are over and that's it. But while you're here, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to clothe you. But the
Pretty
minute
much.
you're no use to me anymore, you're out on the street and you're naked, and that's the analogy. So if you were given enough, like we had the support of a label, we did have a recording budget, we did sell enough records to support ourselves and continue, but not so well. We didn't go out there and sell 5 million records, It was every record we finished, we wondered if we would get to make another one.
I can't believe you guys were signed that long. I'll be
Yeah,
honest with you, I know a lot of stupid nerd music facts, and that to me is definitely an anomaly. And I mean,
we
you must have
were
had other people in the industry go 11 years, because even if you're making money, there's a certain point where they were just cutting,
unheard of.
burn,
Yeah,
burn.
look, I mean, we were one of the only bands in Warner Music history to actually finish their 7 album deal. Mind-boggling, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I
I
don't
mean,
think people realize that. I mean, and people just remember we are talking about this conversation. Is that I was talking about chasing euphoria, but be inspired by this conversation. It inspires you like this is what it's like. This is a little
yeah,
more
I mean,
different.
it's just funny
How,
because,
how great the
like,
album. He knew this, and then goes to the album, be like, oh wow. So this is kind of like the meat and
yeah.
potatoes to get to this nice meal. This is the meat part. This is the cooking part. You
No,
know.
people love this stuff too because I mean, all these interviews are like, "Oh, well, what were you thinking when you wrote this song?" It's like, "Yeah, that's all nice, but like to hear a little bit more perspective on who we are and how we got
Yeah. Oh,
here
there's.
and what we're thinking is kind of cool, right?"
I think it's almost not pedestrian, but I've learned. When I first started, it's like, oh, it's they give me a list, and someone goes, I can't do this. I tried it. And I was like, and I asked them other questions. Someone goes, oh, you can't do that. People don't care. I'm like, I don't know. I care. I'm
Yeah.
making a show for me and people like me. And next
Yeah.
thing you know, they're doing it. The point is, I'm like, I'm talking to someone like you. I mean, why would I want to ask the same question that I could literally go listen to 15 times? Now, of course, you're going to overlap about certain things. But
Yeah,
when an
yeah.
opportunity comes to talk about something a little bit different and hear what a
Yeah.
creative source is talking about, creatively talking about something else, oh my God,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
would you not want
Well,
to?
I mean, I've done interviews and I've derailed them where the guys, just happens to be interested in mastering and I'm talking about gain staging on, and I'm like, and then I do this and then I've got this piece of gear and I'm like, I don't think that's what we signed up for. But so I can go off on a tangent just because, this is my life and I love it and it's exciting to me in that sense. But, beyond the basics of, play, sing, write, record. There's so much of this that goes into it, and I see bands and artists just shoot themselves in the foot like we did. I have the perspective now on it, being in it this long, and trying to figure it out. And very few do, and I don't know that we have. We've just figured it out for
Looking
ourselves.
from my perspective, you guys, despite little things, because you're so in it, there's a minutia. But looking, from me, from the aerial, the tree view, whatever, the helicopter view, it's you guys made very few mistakes despite what was going on to survive. Like, there's
Yeah,
no
because
bad,
yeah,
huge battles. There's no this, no that. Even despite the label support, you still did. You did the anomaly. You still
yeah,
produced really good albums. There's no embarrassing things. You guys did take a break. You've also worked in your respective careers. You're still together.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it
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 doesn't
it
feel
is
like it
all.
feels like you kind of just flowed like water.
Yeah, like I mean, there were never any egos in the band. It's tough to have an ego if you're not, the optics are that you're not doing well. So there was no reason to have an ego. So it was all about the work. And fortunately, with Pete and I, we just loved doing the work and we were maniacal about it. I mean, we made records when there was no auto tune. We were recording to tape. There was no screen. There was no copy and pasting and
I
fixing.
always talk about splicing. That's what I went to school for. Like I literally had
Yeah.
classes just on splicing. No one can appreciate a hairline splice over and over again and tape
Well, I'll
in
give you,
three fifths.
I'll let you geek out a little bit. What I was doing back in the day, because, I had a great recording mentor. The guy that we worked with on our first three records was Kevin Doyle. Kevin did Kiss records, Hall and Oates, the Big Atlanta Miles record at the time that sold like 10 million records. So
Yep.
we were very fortunate. He was in our camp and we just knew him and he got on board, signed on to make the record. And he was an in the weeds, incredible engineer, but musically also knew his shit. He worked with Glenn Gould on piano concerto, like just
Yeah.
unbelievable stuff. So anyway, he was like, okay, so you know what you're gonna do? You're gonna pre-mix all your backing vocals for the chorus because we're only working with a 24 track. You're gonna bounce those down to stereo. You're gonna fly them over to half inch, and you are going to physically mark them at the top of the chorus. When you hit play, you're going to fly them into the 2 inch. And so those choruses on our first three records are manually, they're first of all mixed in analog to stereo groups for low, highs, and mediums vocals. So 6 stereo tracks for the backing vocals. And then they're flown in from a half inch 2 track on every chorus. So we were already trying to copy and paste back in the day using analog gear and all that stuff. So people would watch us in the studio and we'd have friends, they would, I want to come watch you guys record. And meanwhile, for 3 hours, we're flying in like, a snare onto a part, or we're,
People don't realize, and people that
sample.
listen, you guys are like, what does he talk about? This is like ninja level editing, old school. This
Yeah,
is
yeah, we
this
were
is some
doing
heavy
that.
duty stuff to get a
That's
good
what we
sound.
Yeah, that's where we came from making records. And it was sad because, me personally, more than any of the other guys, I dedicated my life to learn how to make records back in the day that way. And then technology allowed every idiot on the planet to open up their laptop and go, I'm a producer or I'm
Which
an
is why
engineer. It's
I
like,
didn't go
okay.
on to engineering school. I would just go for recording and video
Yeah,
music, right? But right
yeah,
when that happened, it was 90s. And then right when Apple came out, when everything came out, the studios,
yeah,
everything went down like when I was new. So I mean, I switched and maneuvered myself. I had to pivot. But the point is, because everybody could do it, and it was really hard
yeah,
going out of
yeah,
school at the time where I was at.
yeah.
But do that. That is awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
look, I mean, and again, like it all dovetailed together because again, getting so into recording allowed me, and again, Warner was just like, well, here's some money, go make a record. There's no producers, no nothing. So we just started buying recording gear. And in the end, I had a full-fledged, full-blown SSL room with every piece of outboard gear on the planet that you can imagine. And even now, I still have remnants of it sitting in my mastering room. Most of it's off because, I'm in the box a lot, but
right?
at the same time, just super high-end analog gear. And I love that side of it too, because that's where I come from. So record making to me was about that as much as anything. So, to talk about one thing is just to me is just very,
Has I
yeah.
have I have two questions. I know I'm getting towards the end of this. I want to, but I have your time so long. I want to say, one is being what you do recording and the mastering now, has it affected your songwriting as you know to what you want to do, the end result, what the technology can do, what you can do, how hard on
Yeah.
yourself, how not hard on yourself? Over time, have you kind of learned it to the point where it's almost that's almost like you know how to do that? And this is almost not related, but the second question is we'll do it as one though. When you first started out, you guys were writing songs together. The one big issue a lot of bands have, though, you talk about egos, is when the first checks come in because no one really cares who's writing songs. It's you guys just write the songs, get the
Yep.
album. No one's really paying attention to the music money coming in afterwards.
Yeah.
Once that happens, in second album, a lot of guys want to start writing their own songs,
Yeah.
which usually hurts a band because if you do that, it's not the same. It's not the same band anymore. Well, because the same two guys aren't. The formula's changed. You're not using
Yeah.
the same recipe. So it's a kind of unrelated question. So did that happen at all? The dynamics of the songwriting, was that ever challenged in a way, or has the band always
No,
been
not really.
open?
I mean, it was always the policy was best idea wins. I mean, I couldn't care who came up with the idea in that sense. If anything, I've always welcomed,
You two on the third albums out there, you get a mortgage coming due. You're like, man, it sure wouldn't have hurt to have a better idea.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I need a swimming pool. Yeah, yeah. I need a pool, right near a swimming pool. Yeah. And so, it was always very, all for one kind of vibe
Right.
making records. And so, we didn't care. But again, you have to put in the time and effort. I mean, it's not something that you can just sit down and say, well, anybody can come in and write a song and help. Because again, if you're working at it every day, you're trying to escalate it to another level. And if I can say, this without sounding egotistical. That's what we were able to do. You know, someone can give you the money to make a record, you know, the record company, but we actually had to deliver from a sonic standpoint, making that record and the songs that were on it. And if they weren't good enough, we never would have gotten to the next part. And we were very aware of it. We knew where the bar was, and it had to get to that level, and that's what we were trying to do. And you know, whether people think we did or not, but our fan base obviously thought that we were doing that, and that's what it's always been for us, and still to this day. And to answer your question, yeah, I mean, making records, like when I was mixing, and all I was doing was mixing records for a while, and then I started mastering and I started mixing differently because I realized that one component of how to put mixes together that translated better. And so from a mixing perspective, there's things you can do that will allow the mastering process to go better.
Mhm.
And the mastering being the final process and how everything actually gets, you know, finished and out there to the world, that's important. And even when we're writing things, we know sonically how they're going to translate. And it's an interesting thing. You know, AC/DC would be a perfect example of keep things straight and simple, and they will sound big. You know, the
Mhm.
big dumb moments were the big dumb moments. When you fill it up with too much stuff and there's too many notes, too much information, too many layers, things have to fit in that box. And so we've always been guilty of kitchen sink, 10 things going on at the same time. And it's very hard to remove those things because they're your ideas and you like them. But at the end of the day, if you can write, mix, and record with a perspective of how the end result is going to sound and translate, that's a good writing tool as well.
That's kind of the answer. I think you're gonna say something like that, knowing how we've talked and how your brain seems to work really good. And now, and just to throw this out there to people, I'm excited the fact that what about the potential of now recording and writing with Atmos?
Yeah. And again,
Nerd level, nerd alert, because sonically now you can
yeah,
write. Now people that don't know Atmos, you can it's almost like visually placing sounds
yeah.
where you really should be, depending on your earbuds or devices the right way, which opens up the spectrum on not on this level, on this level, which for a composer is just like, oh my God. It's like
Yeah.
ramen noodle to the best meal ever.
Yeah, I mean it's a 360 listening experience, right? So the stereo obviously just left and right, and you can, achieve a lot of, amazing sonics that way. Just did a record for a band called Envy of None, which is Alex Lifeson's new project. And
Okay, yep.
there were stereo mixes, and then I mastered the record in stereo, and then later on they went back and they did Atmos mixes from those sources. And so, and the reason I use that as an example only because Alex is very ethereal in the sense that like there's a lot of stuff going on, right? And there's
Yeah.
there's loops, there's live drums, there's multiple bass parts, multiple keyboard things, shit's flying around, and it's really, really cool. So you can take something that typically would live in stereo and have a real incredible 360 listening experience on Atmos. And right now, Apple is the only one on playback with the earbuds where you can do that. Spotify does not offer
No.
Atmos listening, and you kind of got to be in a room. It's been around a long, long time. For some listeners that don't know, it hasn't really caught on because of the playback
Right.
limitations. There aren't a lot of great ways to hear an Atmos mix, but a lot of the top artists, the bigger artists with budgets, are doing it. It's not cheap. So,
No. But
yeah,
it will
it's
happen. It will
level.
happen. It's not the laser disc. It's not going away. I do want to say
Yeah,
because the technology of it. Deep Purple's album was just mixed. Diesel's album just did Deep Purple's album. We did it.
yeah,
Did a lot,
yeah,
classic album. It's fantastic. I've heard some other albums that way. It's beautiful. I mean, and
yeah,
then you get to danger of overwriting because you can't. But you still have to know your limitations.
yeah,
Like any other tool, it can be elevate you this much higher, but you still can't jumble it up. You've got to if you
yeah.
can master writing, knowing your Atmos together and with a good producer, oh, it's gonna be perfect. you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much new technology out there right now where, I mean, I've actually been working on a Frank Sinatra box set from a mastering perspective. And what I also did, I destemmed it all, which for people that don't know, separate the lead vocal from the rest of the music. So I've got a Frank Sinatra lead vocal live
Standalone,
in
yep.
the 1940s, live at the Hollywood Bowl and the orchestra. And now I'm able to, literally treat that vocal with a sense if he was a little quiet on a word, a little loud, re-EQ it, a little bit of processing or whatever it is. And it's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, there's purists that were like, don't fuck with the Frank vocal. And I'm like, I know. So, like
Yeah,
I'm
you can't.
very aware of, where that line is with
Let me ask you this though, and the Frank question. You pulled me in. Like I could sit in the studio and just talk to you about everything all day musically. The studio stuff. Now, Frank was always so impeccable with his timing. I mean, how much can you hear that? Like he was just so
I've been
on
telling
in the
anybody
raw
that'll
vocal.
listen. I call all my friends and go, I'm working on this Frank stuff. And I'm like, he's fucking unbelievable.
Like that's
Unbelievable.
right here.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I would be in. I'd be like, really, and let's go down to lunch. I'm
It's
buying lunch. I'm
amazing.
going
When I
down.
solo it, I'm just like, it's unbelievable. He on an entire, like I've done 5 albums in this box set. It'll be out in a couple of months. And there's maybe 2 words where I'm like, that's a little sharp. Two
Yeah,
on five
his
albums.
pitch, his tune. People think he's just doing his strength. Yeah, like the
No, he's
level of his
unbelievable.
voice is. I used to do a show on radio for a hot minute. I was doing radio, called The Sounds of Sinatra, which
Yeah.
is 2 hours of Sinatra, like, and you just listen to it. So I mean, you know it. I mean, but you know what I'm saying. So the level of Sinatra people just don't realize. So the fact you get to hear that and do that is such
Oh,
a great,
it's
it's
crazy. And
fantastic.
and and
It's been a pleasure talking to you. Clearly, we'll have to make room and do karate in the garage. And who's his best
oh,
friends? Chasing Euphoria though is a really good album. I do have to say. I mean, I get the albums early. I check them out. I choose who I have on my show. I choose by the albums, the artist, whatever. So to me, it was a full thing. I always wanted to speak with you and the band on many levels. You know, you've been my earshot listening for a long time, but also this album, and I love the production was a good part of the album. The song, the songwriting, it's a full package. You put it in. There's a comfort. I want people to know, like when you listen to the album, you can be like, first off, your hair is Harem Scarem. You gotta dig it. You already like it. It's one of your top albums of the year. It's a no-brainer. Now let's talk about people who don't like it or don't know it or maybe or
yeah.
whatever. You put it in, songs that feel familiar, but feel like you're hanging out with a friend you haven't talked to. Why don't we talk more often? That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a compliment, you're like, oh, I can make more time for you. This was good. It felt good tonight.
Yeah.
That's what the album feels like. You're like, this feels good. I haven't done this in a while. I'm familiar with the groove because it's AOR, AOR rock. It's good. The melodies are good. It feels good to sing in your car, turn up the radio, whatever. And it's not like I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not looking at, what's going on in the world being on fire. It just feels good to have some good songs on some just good topics and safe in a way you're not. It's just positive. It's a positive album.
Well, thank you. And look, you nailed it. That's exactly what we were talking about doing, and whether we did it or not. I mean, we were very conscious that that's what we were trying to do. For people that know our first record and our second record, the first record is very straight up with chord structures, not a lot of riffs. Next album, Mood Swings, was the one that kind of broke us internationally and where people came on board for the first time. Very heavily based on riffs and a couple left turns and just,
Mhm.
we're trying to be clever, right? So this is right up the middle of that. We wanted choruses that anybody could sing along to, easily
Right.
digestible, singable,
Big, beautiful
musically
choruses,
had some weight.
great riffs, but great riffs. Production, the drums and the bass sound good. It sounds good in your headphones. It sounds like a good, clean, big sound. It's not, you know, muddy. I'm always about the sound of an album. A good produced
Yeah, and
album.
yeah, so I mean that we were just trying to be right up the middle with all of that stuff. And I mean we weren't trying to do, throw people off the trail. And we usually would have, chorus two ends, we have this weird bridge or a cut time part, and then musically go off into here and then bring it
Yep.
back to there. And so we just didn't want to throw anybody off the trail this time.
It's a
We're
good
just like,
rock record. You're saving it for the rubber reunion. Wait, what?
yeah. So
All right.
we've had our fill of all of that. So
I know.
we've tired ourselves out with trying to be clever, and now we're just doing what we know. Yeah.
I love that you guys did that. Just want to say I tease because that's who I am, but I love when a band does something just because they want to do it.
Look,
I
and
even
still to this day,
I forgive Metallica for Lou Reed, so I totally love when a band does something
look,
different.
and I will argue to the death that that if we were to produce those songs up the same way that we produce up the rock records like this one, it wouldn't be that different. And people go, "No way, that's a completely different album." And I go, "It isn't, it isn't." And then people that would argue with me about it would come see us live back in the day when we were still playing, let's say,
Hmm.
five rubber songs in the middle of like a Harem Scarem traditional set, and they go, "Oh, I see what you mean now." Yeah,
Yeah,
because with the same guitar sound, same drummer, same people playing it, it can't be that different. And stylistically, they're pop songs. They're always
right.
pop songs. But if one song that's a pop song, in essence, is detuned and junk, 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 you're gonna feel differently about it than the same approach with different tones and window dressing. But that's the
But they visually
experiment.
hear you too, don't you think that though? That was the other danger, visually hearing stuff. I hear you as
Yeah,
this band with this hairdo, and then you have
absolutely,
this band with
for
these
sure.
jorts, you have jorts on or something, obviously, whatever. But
Yeah,
you know what I'm
no,
saying?
no,
This band has this
100%.
sound, the band's changed, and you're like, oh, it sounds differently. You put those two songs, and you're like, yeah, but I wrote that song, same
Yeah,
album. I just
yeah,
carried it over, and I'm on a different outfit
yeah,
now. Like
yeah.
literally, a lot of times, it's that basic to people without realizing it.
Look,
You
I
know,
mean, I'll do a lot of live records and stuff, and then when you see the visual with it, I swear to God, it sounds better because there's some part of your
Mhm.
brain that just acts differently when you have something visual to focus on, and the sonics just the two worlds come together nicely, and there's something about it. So there's that. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, but you're right.
there's got to be a study out there, like visually, of like what your mind visually does and creates like these make believe sounds or something, or even like when you do something and you hear it. Like I'll play a song on guitar and I'll be like, oh, if I hear one more, I always say to people, for example, not dogging the Eagles, just I hear Hotel California one more time. But then like you start playing guitar, and I start playing guitar, and all of a sudden whatever came up, like, oh, what's chording? You start playing the chord, and you're like, oh, I didn't get that from the Hotel California. Like, or this is an example of like you hear it and see it differently.
Yeah,
It feels like it feels like we're visually hearing things that aren't always the same things. And when you
yeah,
do get to hear the authentic version of it, it's so different, or it's just such a different perspective. And I've
yeah,
learned
yeah.
that from well, like from producing, from doing this show, playing instruments, of other songs I've played. Like there's so many ways I think we don't actually view music the same. I hear it the way it's meant.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean there's so many elements to it that, I think the listener experience, and again, it's mood too. Like, I mean, we've all done it. You hop in the car and you're in the mood for this, or you want to listen to that one day. You hop on Spotify. What is it that makes you feel I want to listen to this today, but I don't want to listen to that, even though you might love it tomorrow or
What
you loved it yesterday?
I could say Harem Scarem is because they want to hear the first two or three because that's when they were there before they went to college and they did this and they had kids. Because
Yeah.
you also bands become the nostalgia soundtrack of those 3 or 4 years or whatever the time period is for some people, and that's it. And then they went off to debt and college and young kids and they're
Yeah.
whatever. And then other bands come out. I just feel like I could be making fun of somebody by doing it that way. But you know what I'm saying? Like you're really that and that happens to everybody. Now everyone's got their kids in college, whatever. Everyone's going out and having fun again, going
Yeah.
cruises, doing stuff, and they're revisiting it again. And a lot of bands like you can still crush it because you've always been playing music. You're musicians.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it's very rare that we'll do a show anywhere, especially around the world, where people come up to us. Where I heard of you the first time was on Degrassi Junior High. We had the soundtrack to this
You did.
fucking movie, and we didn't even know it, right? Our lawyer
I'll be honest
had
with
the
you. I
thing
didn't know
going.
because it's not my age group, so I wouldn't even known it. I had
Yeah,
to learn that because I'm like, I've heard I knew it was a kids show, but why would I be watching kids shows at my age?
well,
Like that'd be
exactly. And
kind of
so,
creepy.
yeah, we kind of heard about it from fans coming up to us. I mean, we knew it was happening just because
How
we
old
were
were they though? Were you
aware.
making sure it was the age group watching those shows? Because
Well, yeah,
yeah,
we literally no idea even what was going on or what it was. But then we hear from fans going, "This is the first time I heard about you," or "This is the first time I looked into it because I found out that it was you guys." And all it was our album, and they kept putting songs in this in movie and the TV show and stuff like that, which was great. But to that point, still to this day, people are reliving that nostalgia. They're
yes,
coming to the shows because they love this TV show at this time in their lives when life was great. They were a teenager or they were in college or whatever. They come to our shows to hear those songs and relive that great feeling at that moment. And you go, wow, okay. So that's very real.
It's a powerful touchstone as long as it doesn't take over your whole life. Like if you can appreciate the fun part of it, like you like
Yeah.
anything else like back then, it can be fun.
Yeah.
It can be dangerous, but it can be fun. That's when you guys get the crazy fan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, there are lots of those. Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
have to send you and I have to do another show. We'll also get a deep dive again.
Yeah. Anytime.
This has
Yeah.
been a pleasure. I thank you
Yeah.
for being on the show. So probably gonna go up today or we'll go up right away because the album coming out. I want to get this up there for people.
Yeah.
People check about the band. As I always say, go to the website. You don't have a website, do you? You have Facebook, you have Instagram, some
We've
weird
been
things on there. I
yeah, we've
tried.
been screwing around with that forever, but we will share this on our socials.
Right.
Facebook,
But
yeah, there's a Harem Scarem page.
yeah. I'm saying, but for people to go, I like to encourage people. Actually, I don't usually have links for myself on my show. I usually have the artists. I'm a big fan of having the artists on it. I don't care if you guys subscribe to me. You'll see more artists, yes, and hopefully, and Harry back. But what I'm saying to other people is, go to the socials. I usually put the socials down. Instagram, support you on the socials. If you got a YouTube page, subscribe. If you can buy the merchandise at the show directly, buy it directly.
Yeah.
Buy it on the website. Always buy directly from the band if you can do it. If you can hear it, if you're gonna stream it, of course, stream it online. You can buy it physically. It helps the band more. If you're gonna stream it, you might be able to buy yourself a can of corn by the end of the year by having 1 million views. But it still helps the numbers because the band knows what songs are popular and it still gives them some support.
Yeah.
But financially, hit the band up the right way if you can help them. And you're on tour.
Yeah, we leave tomorrow. We're Spain on Thursday, Friday in Portugal. I think I don't want to give the wrong information. Go to our website.
That's all right.
Check
Go
it
to the
out.
website. All right. And there we go. Thanks, man, for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, and